It really is just an exercise of faith. Like, as a person of faith, it's just, yeah, I don't got the goods. I'm not in control. I wasn't in control of this happening or being found out or its duration or severity. Like, I'm really not in control. And there's a humbling factor to that. And there's a faith factor of, I'm just going to believe this.
Hey, Bethany, welcome to the Happy Hour.
Hey, thanks for having me.
It's a joy to finally have you on the show. I've got to give a shout out to my friend Kim Ellis, who has been telling me year after year after year to have you on. And so this show is for me and all of the listeners, but also for my friend Kim. So it's so exciting to have you here. I think Kim's been listening to your music since you started making music. So I think she
my gosh.
I know. She big Bethany Dillon fan. So there's that.
Well, thank you so much. I
would love for you to introduce yourself to my listeners and tell us about your family and what you do now.
I go by Bethany Barnard now, and because that's my name. But yes, I started Christian music as Bethany Dillon a long time ago when I got signed when I was 14, and so 20 years ago. And did that for a bit, and then got married to Shane from Shane and Shane. He's the cute Shane of Shane and Shane. I mean, no offense. He was the single one. So both things important. But we've been married for about 15 years now. We've got 4 girls. We live in the Dallas area, just part of our local church here, Watermark. And I stay home and do part-time homeschool and manage our home and all the different seasons of travel and craziness, and get to lead worship here and there and write songs here and there. That's kind of our world right now.
Well, I'm super grateful. I told you that I met your husband in DC a couple months ago.
Yeah.
And I went up to him and I said, "What's your last name?" Because I just didn't know which one was your husband, And so I was like, "What's your last name?" Yeah. And then he told me, I was like, "Okay, yes, I am talking to your wife in a couple of weeks." So that was exciting. Bethany, you have an album. What was the name of your last album that just came out? All My Questions?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And when did that release?
That was, so this is 23, 20. It came out the end of the summer of 2022. So it's been a bit over a year now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was out on a date night with my husband last night, and on our way to the restaurant, I was telling him who I was interviewing today, and I was talking about you, and I was like, I got to play you some of our music. And I played one of your, you'll have to explain this to me because I don't want to mess it up, but I don't know if it's 2 different albums, but on one of your albums, you have these intro to each song where you really talk about each song. And I don't know, did you release 2 separate albums for that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yes, because I released All My Questions, but before it came out, we had a get together with our close friends and community here, and I had pre-recorded those, the stories behind the song, because it's a very raw, emotional record, and I wanted to share those things, but I knew I probably couldn't do it in person with
live,
everyone.
Yeah.
So I recorded them.
Yeah.
And then after the record came out, we were like, I think that would actually be really, I know that's happened with other records, just that it would be helpful to share more of the story, and especially for people who are going through seasons of grief or suffering or doubt, to just kind of add even more dimension to that, in hopes that it would be more comforting and encouraging. So yeah,
I loved it so much. And and I was telling my husband, I was like, babe, you should do this when y'all's next album comes out. Y'all should get together and record these, because it is super helpful for a listener to feel like, where did this come from? And so I want to talk a little bit about this album, and more importantly, what in your life led you to write this real raw and vulnerable songs. I was listening a couple of weeks ago to the song, and it's at the
Mhm.
beginning of the album. And I was just really, really impacted by your ability to bring so much of yourself into these songs to where I could also find myself in them. And I think that is
Mhm.
like shows what a beautiful songwriter that you are. But I want to know, where did these songs come from for you?
Mhm. Um, I I had kind of had a long season of no writing, and then in 2020, along with the pandemic, my dad uh, was at the end of battling cancer for the second time, uh, and so while the world shut down, all of my family is in Ohio, so we, like us Bernards in Texas, went up to Ohio and were there for hospice and his last days. And I'm from a really big family, and so the trauma and grief of watching my dad deteriorate, and then watching everyone else be in pain as well, and processing that, and then there were some other things. It wasn't just one thing, but there were some other things that reared their heads in that season, and I just was like not okay,
Mm.
and really crashed and burned, and I ended up just kind of rock like bottoming out in mental health, and at the time was in therapy already, but was referred on to a specialist for OCD, and found out I had severe OCD and probably have my whole life, and was severely depressed. So the songs happened uh, so strangely after a long period of silence of doing anything creative, and at the point where I was most mad at God
Mm.
and most not okay and not praying, and uh yeah, by no means full in a spiritual sense, like just songs started to come, like lament and questions
Mhm.
and anger came out that way. And so it wasn't intentionally songwriting, but then after um, some months of processing that way, just Shane and I sat with them and just felt like,
Mm.
even though it's really scary to share anything creative, but to share things
Mhm.
that don't have a bow tied on them, and you're talking about mental health, and there's a song about the night my dad died, just things that felt like I don't want, I really don't want to share this and watch other people listen to it or
Mm.
their reaction. But I think just in I'm really close with my mom, and just in seeing only with her the effect that having a song had on her, in a way that it did make her cry, and it did trigger pain points. It also was comforting,
Mhm.
and that was kind of the impetus for me of like, okay, I do want to share these, um, and hopefully be helpful. So, yeah.
You know, you just mentioned that when you shared that song with your mom, that it was triggering and it was hard, but it was also comforting. And I think that is how
Mhm.
I would probably sum up your album a little bit, Bethany, is that it
Mhm.
is hard. And I think that there are probably songs that would be triggering for some people, but yet there's so much comfort in that. And I think that is how like the Christian life works, is that like this life is hard and there are so many things that are triggering, and it is like a lot of days some people wake up going, I don't know how I'm going to get through today. Like I don't know how I'm going to function.
Yeah.
But yet we find that Jesus is there. I mentioned that song, and it starts out by you saying, Holy Spirit, you are bigger than depression. And I
Mhm.
listen to that line all the time. And although I don't struggle with that, I have people really, really close to me who do. And so it's very personal
Mhm.
to me in that way. Um, but it is so, so comforting. And so you talked about this journey that summer, when your dad passed away, and you
Mhm.
getting back into therapy and getting diagnosed with severe OCD. Was this something that you had been diagnosed with depression, any kind of mental illness, OCD previous to then, or is this just when it kind of got the spotlight on it because of circumstances in your
Mhm.
life?
I probably had gone through like depressions before, but chalked it up to like, spiritual drought or dark nights of the soul. Like not, I think there was I loved therapy and I'd gone to therapy before, but there was I think a resistance in me because there, of course, is a stigma attached to it, but I think it felt like failure, like, taking medicine or being diagnosed with something felt like, oh, but like, should I try and even treat that? Because what if that's like a thorn it's all jacked up. So,
Yep.
so when I was diagnosed with OCD, and depression goes with it, when it's severe, the thing with OCD is that it's functional until it's not. Like the anxiety, the way that it works for a person who has OCD is it's internal, and your compulsions, like obsessive compulsive, the things that you're doing to neutralize anxiety function for you, even if it perpetuates the disorder until they don't function for you. So when I was totally at the bottom and grieving and all of that, a severe mercy was that suddenly, like, everything internally that I had been able to tolerate and manage and all of that, I was like, no, there's no capacity, there's no room for that anymore. Yeah.
A lot of people that I talk to about any form of mental health or disorder, there is, and you mentioned this earlier, there is a lot of shame attached to it. And I will say that in 2023 and in the past couple of years, I've seen a lot of phenomenal conversations within the church, and I'll speak within the church particularly. But you alluded to even feeling shame over that. And I think that is what a lot of women are having to overcome. It's not even having to overcome, do I need to go see a counselor? It's not even overcoming, like, what do I tell people about this? I think they're having to overcome, is there something wrong with me and God? Like, is this like, should I just like pray more, or is this, like you said, a thorn in my flesh? And so I'd love to hear how you process that, because that is a struggle for so many women who literally love Jesus so much. And all of a sudden they're going, how can I love Jesus so much and struggle so much? And so how did that process look for you?
Really just kind of brutal and real. I mean, truly, it took me some time, even though there was relief in, when I got connected with an OCD specialist who was looking at my thorough assessment and going, there is no doubt that you do have OCD, even though I'm like, but even though there was some relief and a name and even thoughts that I had, like them being said by someone else, and like, hey, do you ever, it's like your mail getting read, there's kind of that feeling of relief, like, okay. But then it's followed really quickly by all the things that you just said. And so it took some time. And I think that that's a factor. I think even the hang up of, well, then if it's okay, then why can't I just like snap and be like, okay, well, there is no shame attached to it. It's like, what things are there in life that we don't have to, that are huge, that get all tangled up in our identity or in our day-to-day, or strength, weakness, like our self-perception, all of that. Like, there really isn't anything that's immediate. Like, we are all processing all of the time. And so I think just even having, hopefully, like, if someone who's listening is in the thick of that, like, just knowing that that's really normal, and that isn't a disqualifier, and that isn't even a red flag, check engine light. It's like, that's just real. It's a big thing. And then I think eventually what it was, I was at the point where, again, like, it wasn't functional for me, and I did wonder, like, did I give this to myself? Where have I missed it through the years, and what is the wreckage behind me that now I can see and I've got to go fix, or I've got whatever, how long is this going to take? It really is just an exercise of faith. Like, as a person of faith, it's just yeah, I don't got the goods. I'm not in control. I wasn't in control of this happening or being found out or its duration or severity. Like, I'm really not in control. And there's a humbling factor to that. And there's a faith factor of, I'm just going to believe this therapist that God has provided. I'm going to believe what I'm hearing and just put one foot in front of the other and humbly like commit to the process. And
Yeah.
and I see the Spirit's work and his help in that, because it's not like I'm some courageous person that was able to like, again, like pull it together and do that. So but I mean, I would have been like so mad at anybody who had said that to me in the moment. I'm saying this now, years later, you know?
But I think that's a lot how it is. Like the things that are so hard to hear, you look back and you're like, oh, that actually was so true.
Like I needed that, yeah.
Yeah, you needed that. I want to know for you and for anyone listening, what does it look like? You know, we know as our faith, like you talked a lot about faith, and this may be the answer that you're going to give me is what you just said. But Christ offers us so much freedom in him. Like we are free in Christ, all the things. What does it look like to walk in the freedom of Christ and still acknowledge this hasn't gone away? This is still a part of my story, but yet I truly find freedom in Christ. Because I think some people think those are at odds with each other, but how can they be the same?
Yes. Oh man. Well, that's a doozy. You want me to answer that? I mean, for my own experience.
I mean, for you, yes. I'm not asking you to theologically break it down. I mean, for
know.
Bethany.
But I'm an overthinker, so I'm like, ooh, let's talk about that. I think that the freedom has come. I mean, I have received freedom from him in the like seasons, that big one, but then there's plenty more that happen in life where it's just like I can't feel what I feel like I should. I have this ideal in my head, and I have who I should be in my head, and I am looking around and like all these unchecked boxes in my life, whether it's my kids or my neighbors or my husband or the state of our house and its cleanliness or whatever. It's like God has been so kind to allow me to just really be at a place of like, I can't, even if I really wanted to, I can't check all of the boxes. And getting to the other side of that, there's a lot of anxiety that comes with that of like, I'm not okay, you know? And is it okay that I'm not okay? And our house is a mess. And I haven't made eye contact with the girls today, I don't think. And Shane and I are kind of ships passing in the night because I'm super out of it. Like, and just to be in that spot and to feel the anxiety of it and the heaviness of it, and then to get to the other side of that wave of anxiety about it and be like, man, the sky didn't fall. And within OCD, there's an aspect of it called scrupulosity, which is obsessions over religious things. It's not just Christian faith, but for me, it's the obsession of, man, what am I not doing spiritually? And one of the treatments for that is to cease for a while, to like, I'm not going to read my Bible first thing in the morning. My therapist told me, stop reading your Bible. Like, not for forever, but also like, I'm not going to tell you when you're going to start again. And it's okay that you're not praying. And you don't need to invite your unsaved neighbors over this week. And all of that stuff made me want to vomit. And then I get to the other side of that amount of time and see that the Lord was still doing things. And so I think it's just, now that's a lengthy answer, but I think the freedom has come by witnessing I'm not the leader. I'm not the captain. I'm not like, God has given me strength, but I have a whole lot of weakness. And it's okay that I'm not checking every box. Not in a indifferent way, but just in a, I can't. I got to sleep. I get sad. I got to go to therapy. I have 4 kids and they all drive me crazy sometimes. Like it's I'm not the leader and he's the leader, and I have seen him do things in my seasons of really, really, really not being able, like just celebrating getting to the end of the day, and yet he's still at work, and that has freed things in me. I'm so grateful for. It was painful, but I'm grateful.
It sounds like you're living out the idea of where Jesus says, "Come to me, all who are weary, and I will give you rest." And that take
Mm-hmm.
on my yoke is easy. It sounds to me like you're like, I'm living in this right here. Would you say
Yeah,
that to be true?
I get to live in that. Yes,
Yeah.
and I wouldn't choose it. You know, like I wouldn't have chosen it for myself, sadly. And I'm so grateful that he initiates that in us, right? Like
Mm.
Hebrews 12, like Jesus is the author, the founder of our faith, and the perfecter of our faith. And I
Which
am
takes a
so
lot of load
grateful.
off of you.
It does, right? The pressure's
Yeah.
off.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
You don't get to put all the characters in your story and
Right.
the whatever events that happen. Like, you just don't.
Yeah.
And so that way, it's like I get to see the character of God and I get to receive from God
Mm.
and really enjoy relationship with Him, not like transactional relationship, but relationship.
Yeah.
And so, yes,
I love that you're not the captain, and then bringing it back to Hebrews 12. Like, it is such a good thing for us to think about, is that Jesus is in charge of our faith, and he is the one
mm-hmm,
who is starting it, who's perfecting it, who's moving us closer to him. It's so beautiful. Bethany,
yeah,
whenever I think about my friends and my family who are have some kind of mental health disorder, I always want to know from whoever I'm speaking with, whether that's you or my husband who battles with depression as well, what is it that is so helpful for you within your community? Because I'm listening to your story, the little bit that
yeah,
you shared with us, and I'm like, man, there had to have been things that Shane did that you, looking back, go, that was a big help. Or that your
mm-hmm,
community, or that your friends. Like, what does it look like for us as followers of Jesus to gather around our friends when they're walking through moments of suffering like that come with from mental health? What does it look like for us to be the church to them?
yeah. That's such a good question. Um, because you can apply that to like someone who has a miscarriage. Like it's just
Hmm.
good to ask people who have experienced loss or suffering and go, hey, what was helpful?
Yeah.
I feel like that's a really helpful question. For me, it looked like people just meeting needs in the mundane, and not one person took it all. And
Mm.
something that I really loved, a dear friend of mine, Kelly Needham, who is a fantastic Bible teacher. Um, she and I have known each other a long time, and our kids are similar ages, love each other. And she just really taught me, because she was like, "Hey, you know, here here are some ways that I could step up for you in this season. So let me know if any of these work." And it wasn't at all like, these are the ways that I can help, but it
Right.
was like, hey, I'm limited. Here's some things I can do. Do any of them sound like they'd be helpful? And it's okay if none of them do. And you can
Yeah.
tell me what would be helpful, and I'll see if I can do it. And so, it was like, hey, can I come pick up your kids on Friday after school? And we just have them for the weekend. Give you and Shane the house. Yes, yes.
Yes.
Um, or, nobody, I was so fortunate. Like, I feel like my close circle of community, as they were present with me in that, there just weren't a whole lot of answers. Like, people weren't just
Hmm.
giving me answers, or like, why don't you? And that's not necessarily wrong, but also, like,
Hmm.
I think that it's short sighted. So to just
Hmm.
be present,
Yeah.
even in spirit, if it's like, because for me, alone time, I really wanted some alone time. I'm a mom and I slept a lot. And
Hmm.
so just for people to be like, hey, can I give Lucy and Haven a ride to school on Mondays until you tell me to stop? Like, yes.
Hmm.
So there
Yes.
really was, in the span of a week, at least 10 people helping me out, who they didn't all meet up, but people who just within their what they could do, offered that up, and were like, hey, can I show up? And if you want to go for a walk, great. But if not, you're not going to hurt my feelings. Like, hey, you're doing the good work of getting to the end of the day. It's going to be okay. It's okay that we're coming alongside of your family and loving on your kids right now. It's not going to damage them. Like, so that's community. And then I would say for Shane, I mean, he's my hero, Jamie, and I just truly, he's my favorite person. And anybody who is a fan of him, I'm just like, you just don't know the half of it. So that
Right.
is very true of him. And
Yeah.
going through that time where I was not some trophy wife at all, he just was really like, even if internally some days he was ruffled, it was just like, I never felt like I was disappointing him. I never felt like he was kind of moping around. It was like, in the ways that he could, like he kept the kitchen going and clean, and he would take the girls out to go get Sonic and have fun for a couple of hours, and he would, hey, why don't you just take the night off going up, and like he would be with me and he would listen, but I think just his presence and his like not having to be asked to do certain things, but instead just like jumping in, and I didn't feel shame from him, was just so, it was just so healing. And so like I did feel embarrassed sometimes by like all the things that I wasn't doing, but that just that trust and that like stability of him filling in some of my roles like was just so healing. And it didn't last for forever, but yeah, there were not many people who were like, let me tell you, this is how you're not trusting God right now.
Good.
I mean, it just felt
Yeah.
like God surrounded me with some pretty solid people who were like, yeah, this sucks. Of course you're sad that your dad
The
died.
honest reality. Yeah.
Of course you're depressed right now. Go take a nap. Your kids will be okay. We'll get Chick-fil-A. Do you want Chick-fil-A? No, you don't? You want me to get you a bottle of wine? Okay, cool. Like, just kind of like, hey, it's not all on you, Beth. We're not depending on you. And that was just so good.
I hear a lot of people say kind of the same thing that you said when I asked them that question. And most of it is, no one is sending you messages saying, hey, what do you need from me today, Bethany? But the conversation that I hear most from people, they're saying, hey, like you just said, I can pick your kid up tomorrow. Would that work? If not, I can do it on Friday. Like just totally like throwing out, here's what I can do. And I love, no one has ever said what you just said about they were doing what they had capacity for as well. Right. And I think that is so important to hear, because those of us who want to help feel like, oh my gosh, I have to do it all, because if I don't do it all, then what kind of friend am I? But you basically just said, whatever your capacity is, how can you do that? And that was beautiful. I've never heard anyone say that when I've asked them that question, but they all say the same thing. Everyone says they said a few things and then I got to pick. Yeah. And that was the best thing that could happen.
It's so true. Because I had a friend who did mostly the meal train thing. Yeah. And then I have multiple friends that come to mind right now that like never supplied a meal.
Right.
And that's okay, because they came over and brought me coffee, or they took the girls out in the backyard for a while. So, yeah.
I have a vivid memory of standing in my kitchen. This was years ago. We weren't even the house we're in now. So probably 10 years ago, my kids were probably like 9, 8, 7, 6, those ages. And Aaron's out of town, and Aaron's our number one cook in the house. Aaron's out of town. And so not only when Aaron leaves do I have to figure out what I'm supposed to feed these children, which is always like 5 o'clock. I'm like, what am I doing? At that age, for sure.
Yes.
But at 5 o'clock, I'm figuring out what I had to do for my children. And I get a text from a friend, and she had just had a baby. And she said, hey, no rush. I'm just wondering what time you're bringing the meal over so I can plan. She just had her third baby. So this isn't her first rodeo. It's not like she can put a kid down. Here we are. And I'm standing there and I had forgotten. And I don't cook for my own family. Why did I sign up to cook for somebody else? Literally, it's the last meal I ever took to somebody. And I barely got her a meal. It was the Last Supper. Now, I will say what I can do is I can go to Whole Foods and get those pre-made meals. I'm a fan of that.
Yes.
So this is what I try to do. If someone I know is doing that, I'm not going to sign up for the meal train. But if I'm at the grocery store, I'm going to text them and say, hey, I bought you some dinner. Can I bring it by today or tomorrow? So that's what you can do. See? Done.
Easy. Fixed.
But that was my Last Supper that I ever did, Bethany. Was not for me. Was not for me. You know, as you were talking, I got a little teary-eyed because I was remembering, and Aaron and I have already talked through this, so I'm not saying anything on the podcast I haven't talked to my husband about.
Mhm.
But in 2020, when Aaron was struggling, my husband, I took things so personally for so long, and it makes me a little emotional because I look back and I'm like, and I would talk to my counselor about it, and she's like, "It's not you, Jamie. It's nothing to do with you. It has nothing to do with you." And that was a really big struggle for me as the person on the other side of really feeling like
Wow. Yeah.
I must not be enough. If I were better, he wouldn't be struggling. And so I think just to encourage those on the other side, like, it's not about you. Like, literally, like, it has nothing to do with you most of the times. And I would think to myself, Jamie, what a prideful person that you think this is all about you. This is nothing about you. And so I look back, and of course I had time to grow and all the things, and we're 3 years removed. But I do look back and I'm like, man, God, thank you for teaching me that. And everyone makes mistakes, but those are the ones that I like heard about. Is I'm like, oh man, there were so many times that I just thought this is about me. And when you think it's about you, you don't really care about the other person. You're really just caring about yourself. And that is, hard. But that's 23 years of marriage and learning and growing.
It sure
That's
is.
what we do.
And I mean, I've been on your side of it, and I know Shane's been on your side of it.
Yeah.
And I know, so it is that, just like, it is the mercy of, like, you get another lap. You get another chance to just eventually. Another hard time is coming,
We're on our 23rd lap, so here we go. We're doing this. Bethany, I'm really grateful for your album. Like I already said, I love it at my house and listen to it a lot, and just grateful for talking with you today. I would love to hear, before we go, what are you reading these days?
Yeah, I am guilty of reading multiple things at once. I'm reading a book called Everything Sad is Untrue. I don't know the name of the author. It's autobiographical, but he's like going back to 12-year-old himself as an Iranian refugee. Do you know that book?
Yes, I've read it. It's really good. And this is the one where there's like no chapters. It's all just one. Yeah.
Which is hard for my OCD because I'm like, I can't get to a
Where do I stop?
Point. I'm reading that, and I'm reading, I'm listening to the Lord of the Rings trilogy read by Andy Serkis, because I have tried to read the black and white, and it's just been hard for me, but that's been really fun. I'm reading a Charles Spurgeon reader of like transcribed sermons of his here and there. That's been really fun.
I love that.
So yeah, there's just kind of multiple. I'm reading. My girls do a classical school that's like part-time, and so they're reading some literature too that like I have to read aloud to them, and I love it. I mean, I'm like a story junkie. I will sit and listen to a book all day.
Did you say y'all are reading Little Women?
No, but I love Little Women. I know you're reading Little Women.
I finished Little Women, and your girls are probably going to need. Have you read it?
Oh, I love it. Yes, I have.
Okay. Yeah. And I read it for the first time this year.
Oh my gosh. And the four sisters. And I have 4 girls, and I play the game of who's who.
Who is who. I love it. Well, Bethany, thank you so much for coming on the Happy Hour. I really appreciate you and what we talked about today. So thank you.
Thank you.